In today's video, we will explore the critical connection between climate change and the rising tide of global inequality. As climate shifts wreak havoc on our planet, the most vulnerable populations, particularly in developing countries, bear the brunt of its consequences. We'll dive into how environmental changes lead to loss of livelihoods, exacerbate health disparities, and create economic instability, all while discussing the plight of climate refugees and the challenges posed by limited adaptation resources. Join us as we uncover the multifaceted ways climate change is amplifying existing inequalities and what this means for our collective future. 1. Disproportionate impact on developing countries. Developing countries are often at the forefront of climate change's destructive impacts. These nations experience more frequent and severe natural disasters, such as hurricanes, floods, and droughts, which can devastate communities. The lack of infrastructure and resources to effectively respond to and recover from these disasters leaves these countries in a perpetual cycle of poverty and vulnerability. For instance, when a powerful hurricane hits a small island nation, the destruction of infrastructure and homes can set back development efforts by decades. The inability to rebuild quickly means that people remain in poverty longer, and the gap between developed and developing countries widens. As these disasters become more common, the disparity between the haves and have-nots becomes increasingly pronounced. 2. Loss of livelihoods. Many communities in developing countries depend heavily on agriculture and fishing, sectors that are highly sensitive to climate change. Unpredictable weather patterns and extreme conditions can lead to crop failures and reduced fish stocks, threatening the very livelihoods of millions. For example, a prolonged drought can decimate crops in sub-Saharan Africa, leaving families without food or income. Farmers and fishermen find themselves unable to provide for their families, and the ripple effect is felt throughout local economies. This vulnerability to climate-induced changes in livelihood exacerbates poverty, as people are forced to seek alternative, often less stable, sources of income. 3. Limited access to resources. Climate change further strains already limited resources such as water and food in many low-income regions. This scarcity can lead to increased competition and conflict over these vital resources. In parts of Africa and the Middle East, dwindling water supplies have already sparked tensions between communities. When resources are scarce, those who are already disadvantaged suffer the most. The lack of access to clean water and nutritious food not only affects health and well-being but also stifles economic development. The struggle over limited resources only deepens the divide between wealthy and impoverished nations. 4. Health disparities. The health impacts of climate change are also disproportionately felt by vulnerable populations. Rising temperatures lead to an increase in heat-related illnesses, while changing weather patterns contribute to the spread of vector-borne diseases like malaria. Additionally, food scarcity leads to malnutrition, particularly among children in developing countries. Poor health further traps families in poverty, as medical expenses rise and productivity falls. The lack of adequate healthcare infrastructure in many developing nations means that these health challenges are even more difficult to overcome. As climate change continues to affect health, the gap between those who can afford healthcare and those who cannot becomes more pronounced. 5. Economic instability. Natural disasters and climate-related challenges can severely destabilize economies in developing nations. When a major flood destroys infrastructure or a prolonged drought reduces agricultural output, the economic repercussions are significant. Unemployment rates soar as industries suffer, and economic downturns ensue. For countries already struggling with economic challenges, the added burden of climate-related disruptions can be crippling. This instability discourages investment and development, further entrenching poverty. The cycle of economic instability fueled by climate change ensures that the gap between developed and developing economies continues to grow. 6. Climate refugees. As climate change makes certain areas uninhabitable, millions of people are forced to leave their homes, becoming climate refugees. These individuals often face discrimination and limited opportunities in their host countries, exacerbating their plight. For example, rising sea levels threaten to submerge entire island nations, displacing their populations. These climate refugees may find themselves in overcrowded camps or struggling to integrate into unfamiliar societies. The lack of support and resources for climate refugees highlights the growing inequality between those who can adapt to climate change and those who cannot. 7. Limited adaptation resources. While wealthier nations have the means to invest in adaptation and mitigation strategies, poorer countries struggle to fund even basic climate resilience measures. This disparity in resources widens the inequality gap, as wealthy countries can protect themselves from the worst impacts of climate change. For instance, a rich nation might build seawalls to protect against rising tides, while a poorer country lacks the funds to do so, leaving its coastal communities vulnerable. The inability to invest in adaptation measures leaves developing countries at a significant disadvantage, ensuring that they bear the brunt of climate change's impacts. The role of climate change in increasing global inequality is undeniable and multifaceted. As the world continues to grapple with the challenges posed by a changing climate, it is imperative that the international community works together to address these disparities. Only by ensuring that all nations have the resources and support they need to adapt and thrive can we hope to achieve a more equitable and sustainable future.